Rodney. So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm really
Thank you.
excited. I'm very grateful. I know you've been really busy. I know that you've been traveling and speaking and helping pets and pet lovers around the world. I would love to introduce you first to the community, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
Um, you're one of the most influential people in the animal world. You're a filmmaker. You're award-winning blogger. You have the largest pet-related health page on Facebook, and you're also New York Times best-selling author. I've known you for some time, and I know that you're one of the bravest people that I know because you've taken on a very large industry, the pet industry. And I'm very grateful for all the work that you do. And maybe we'll start if it's okay. I'd like to start with your childhood because it always starts at the beginning of our life, how how our path is set. And I really would love to know what was different on your childhood and how you got to where you're at, and and why you care so much about animals and their well-being and health and all that, and their people as well.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's first of all, it's awesome that you're doing this, Dr. Dobias. I mean,
You can call
connecting
me
all the
Peter. I think that it's so much more easy.
well, in case my mother's
We've
listening,
known
she'll
each
she'll beat
other
me.
for what was that?
In case my mother's listening, she'll beat me. My mother will be like, "Did you call that doctor by his first name?" It's like
Yeah.
in here, my parents are Lebanese, and if you ever call a doctor by his first name, they beat you. But Peter, thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for putting this podcast together, brother. I mean, you're connecting pet parents with people. Your podcasts are a lot different than most traditional podcasts that are out there because a lot of them are fast format podcasts. It's right. Let's get down to the nitty gritty, fast fire, fast shooting, where you actually take the time and you ask very, very thoughtful questions. I mean, look, how many podcasts have I done in my life? I couldn't even give you a number, and no one's ever started with, "Hey, let's talk about your childhood." Like, those are just things that,
Mm.
that people with big hearts and people with kind souls and kind humans ask questions like that. And, I've only known you, I've known you for several years, but what the consensus around the vet community and around the integrative world is that, Peter is very different than a lot of people. He has a giant soul and he's guided by his soul. So I got to come out and I got to say that because you and I don't get to throw sunshine at you on your own podcast and take over your podcast. But I got to say
You
that.
know that this is supposed to be about you, right? And I think that what you're seeing really is your reflection because you're one of the most humble, modest, and also influential people in the best way possible. I know that your intentions are real. I know that you care about pets and pet lovers more than about the fame and income and all that. And I think that that's why I'm so grateful that you've made the time. And I honestly, I think that that's where we connect because we know we really care, and it makes us happy. On some level, I'm taken aback by what you're saying because I wasn't ready for it, and I am not very good in taking compliments. But thank you, and let's go back to the childhood. Is it okay? Because I'm
Absolutely.
so curious. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And thank you for your beautiful, kind words. There's again, you always feel that imposter syndrome anytime, you get wonderful, beautiful comments thrown at you. And, the whole sort of cliche of, you know, I, I love animals and I love this and I love that. And I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, I kind of, I'd like to think that everybody in the world sort of feels the same and shares the same love. Uh, for
Mm.
animals. But for me, it was a little different, Peter, because I never, to go back, I've talked about this many times in my childhood, right? I came from a Mediterranean family. So my stem and my love came from the love of my life and my first dog, Sammy. And so she was my guiding light, my heart dog. And she was also the doorway to dogs. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love dogs, but I loved my dog because my dog was my child, and
Mm-hmm.
she
Mm-hmm.
was my whole world to me. You know what I mean? And everything that I did was kind of guided towards her. But to go back, I guess, to childhood, I come from landed immigrants that came to Canada, which makes our country so beautiful and diverse, like yourself. We all came to this country with dreams and aspirations. I was privileged to be born here, but only because my dad and my mother took the risk of coming over here. It's the same sort of story where they only came with a few dollars in their pockets, and they
Mm-hmm.
both worked really, really, really hard. I think the way that my parents brought me up was similar to a lot of children who were born in Canada to landed immigrants, in where the families didn't know how to speak the language very well. And so you'd learn in the mother tongue of their language, and your friends were basically the ones to teach you English and the way that you would have to translate
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother imprinted on me a different way of learning, which today I kind of understood, which I attribute 100% to my the popularity of my work online. And that 100% was solely because of my mother, intentionally or unintentionally, because she couldn't speak the language. She couldn't speak English. So she would open up comic books, because my parents had the quintessential tiny little convenience store that most landed immigrants get into eventually. My mother would always open up the comic books in the store, and she would look through the pictures, and she couldn't speak the language, but she would tell me what was happening in the pictures, ignoring the words completely, ignoring the letters completely. And I can't tell you what that did to me. It's a blessing. It was a curse going through school. I barely made it through school, because you're never taught how to learn in school. You just automatically assume, here's a child, he's going to learn. But all children today have different learning techniques. And I would always just skip. If you looked at my report cards, you'd spit out me, right? Because it was like, I was like the disappointment of every single parent in the world, because my grades were so low, because I couldn't focus on letters. So when the teacher would show the word dog, you would see D-O-G and you would read it. But because of the way that my mother taught me, I would see the word DOG and it was a picture. So I would assume that picture
Yes.
with a
Yes.
dog.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
could never read. And so when I tried to read, I would read paragraphs and paragraphs, but I would never be able to absorb the information, because I would be trying to put pictures together. And then I would start daydreaming, because my brain would take me through more pictures and a series of photos, to the point I'd read a whole page and I'd be like, I don't know what I just read.
This is so fascinating because number one, we know that people who don't fit in the school system, I'm refusing to say don't do well in school, but don't fit in the school system,
Right.
usually end up as one of the most talented and inspiring and influential people ever. And so that's number one. Number two, this explains a lot because now I understand why you're so good with your visuals and with your explanations and with your teachings, and it makes all sense. And the reason why I start with the childhood is that usually a lot is explained, right? Like basically, if we want to learn about people, I think that we start with the childhood and learn about that. And your story of your immigrant parents and how they brought you to Canada is actually so fascinating. It's so interesting because my dad and my parents, in 1968, when the Russians invaded my country, they seem to be invading different countries. My parents wanted to leave, and at the end, because of the grandparents, they decided not to. And so I had to make that journey on my own when I was
Oh,
26
wow.
or 27. And who knows what my life would be like if I came or if I was born in Canada. But and this is Pax. He seems to not like the deer around, so
Listen, the
we'll
last
either leave
Pax
it or cut
always
it out.
listen. He always makes a grand opening. He did it in the Inside Scoop as well. Like, I mean, I love it.
I know, I know.
I love it.
It's
I
driving me
love it.
crazy, and he can be very calm, but then he takes on the serious job of
It's his
looking
job.
after the
He's
deer.
got to do it. He's got to
Absolutely,
do
it's
it.
so
Yes.
serious.
You know, I didn't know you came by yourself, Peter. I thought you would have come with your family. I mean, that's a bold
No,
journey. You're basically,
no,
you did what my parents did. I mean, the bravery to
yeah.
leave a motherland to go somewhere else. I mean, that there's a lot of courage behind that.
It was a little different. Well, I don't know. I just when you're young, you just take steps, and sometimes you're unaware of what's awaiting. And I did graduate in the Czech Republic, but it was really hard to actually come to Canada. Yeah, I wouldn't want to repeat it again. But going back to you, because I know that you're such a kind soul that it's hard to focus on your life for you. But I'm gonna try. So, Sammy, I understand what you're saying about Sammy, because there's always the dog that introduces us to the world of dogs, and the world of love of dogs, and the world of love, I would say. And I remember seeing a picture of you and Sammy in the park with your friend. And again, I don't know many people who would wrap their aging senior dog in the blankets, put them in the little cart, make sure that they're totally comfortable, and take them to the park. And that makes me understand or realize that he knows so much that the emotional well-being is so important in the lives of our dogs. And that, again, there are points where you just kind of connect with people.
Yeah.
And for years we didn't really get to connect as much, and lately we've been connecting a little more. But the more I know about you, the more I appreciate you in many ways. So anyway, sorry for bringing the emotions up, but I have that too. I cry on my podcasts and my recordings all the time, and that's okay, right?
Yeah. She, it's still, it's losing a dog sucks, man. And you're never prepared for it, because nobody, the love that you experience for a dog, you encounter that by yourself. There's no handbook for it, right? So the moment that you get your first dog, you do think for a second, those thoughts do creep in your mind. God, I love you so much. The day that you're going to go, I'm going to die. You think that, right? We all thought that. Anybody that gets their first dog, I don't care who you are, you think it. And then the day comes, and like, it's absolutely the worst thing in the whole world. And it's been a couple of years, but you never get over it. And anybody that thinks about their heart dog, you never get over it. And so, yeah, I don't know how to move past that. That's one thing that I'm learning about. But it's you came you came from a country that was war torn, which my family did as well. So when the war broke out in Lebanon, my family had to evacuate, and that's how my family came here as well. There's a lot of synergies in our story. Um, and they came, of course, with my beautiful grandmother, who I still live with today, almost 100 years old, right? So in that Mediterranean family, man, you're as the oldest son, you're committed. So I got to take care of my grandmother, my father, my mother. And a lot of us are like that, right? That's, as the oldest, that's your job. And that's what I do. And God love her, she was hell bent. You bring a dog into this house and you get hair on my furniture, and I'll make you part of, I'll make you part of the furniture. I'll skin you, and then I'll cover the furniture with your hide. So yeah, I could never,
Uh,
I never was able to experience that love early, but I got to experience later in my life, in my 30s, when I got my first dog. And
mhm,
I talk to people
mhm.
all the time from different countries, foreigners from different lands who never got to experience a dog. And then I know the pandemic came along and they got a dog, people in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s. And they're like, Jesus, is this what it's like? And no one told me. Like I would have started like when I was 1 year old with a dog stuck to me. I didn't know that it was this impactful, and I didn't know that it would do this to me, you know, like
And
your
it's so
first
good for our
experience.
soul,
When
isn't
was your
it?
first, when was your first experience?
Oh, with pets, well, you know, it's very interesting. I have slightly different entry to the canine world. I was actually, as a child, I was afraid of dogs. And the reason was that we had a dachshund, and she was my sibling. She was my sister, according to my father. And she was not very nice to us. so, so I was a little afraid of dogs, and I started with horses. And there was a horse that was injured and had tendonitis, and I had to watch it. I had to watch it limp around in the ring. All the clubs, the riding clubs, were very cheap. It was like $1 every 6 months, and you could ride as much as you wanted. But it was run by the government, and the horses weren't owned by anyone, so we couldn't really decide for them. And the feeling of helplessness, seeing her limping and seeing her being injured, and me not being able to do anything, was really, really hard.
It's the worst.
So I was about 15 or 16, and I made a wish for this horse to be sold to private hands. And that was probably the most difficult kind of mental decision that I made then. And she was sold, and she had a great life, and she had a own little run and a beautiful pen with tiles, and she was really loved and cared. But I actually felt like I could never complete that relationship. And then I went to vet school, wanted to learn all about helping animals and so on. Then I realized that it wasn't that easy, and it wasn't that straightforward, and that medicine doesn't really teach us many important parts of healing. And then I got a cat. We adopted 2 cats when we came to Canada, and it was great. But, you know, getting Sky, my first dog, in 2001, just opened a whole new world of not only love and understanding what it is, and the unconditional connection, and the caring, but also, you know, he started connecting my life in the most this is my sister. I have to close my iPad. I thought I turned off all the devices, and I didn't. Anyway, he started connecting the dots in my life so well, and as you say, the hard dogs, the soul dogs, they teach us so much. They teach us about how to heal medical conditions, or they teach us about how to accept aging, how to come to terms with the finite nature of life. And, you know, you were crying just a moment ago, and I must say that when I learned that Sky was ready to go and I was away, I was in Norway, I had to fly back home, and the whole trip on the plane, I was crying, and I was writing him a letter. And the letter is still actually available online, because I thought, you know, it's super important to know that even though we may have a little minuscule knowledge of how to keep them healthier longer, or at least do our best to do that, then we still have to face the inevitable. And you're right, like, you never recover from it. As you say, it's an interesting journey, but also letting go. I think that it would be much worse if we actually let our pets behind, like if they live longer than us, right? So sometimes I'm conflicted about how long is just about right.
Yeah.
It's never right. I think that it's just the medium for us learning to accept what life is about, right? So
It's a journey, right? It's you can. You start off in day one and you're like this, you're like, I'm gonna do everything to keep you in my world forever. And then when chinks along that life journey start to happen, and then whether it's a torn cruciate, or whether it's a ear infection, or whether it's whatever it is, you know, when you look down and you see your pet not at 100%. Like, kill me right now. Like, take my heart out of my soul, right? Like, how many times do I say, just give me your pain, give me whatever you're going through, and I will give you my health, just because I don't want to watch you go through with it, right? Those are people that are like, the relatability between you and I are many, but we're cut from the same cloth in many aspects. It's why you have the following that you have and the people that adore you, that tune in every week to either hear your podcast, go to your Facebook page to see your posts, see what you're writing about, see what you're doing. It's because of the relatability. And we're all cut from that. We're all, anyway, who's ever listening right now, we're all cut from that same cloth. I think we all, and everybody grieves differently. Peter, for me, right now, the situation that I have is, I don't know if I'll ever have another dog again. I still have Shubi. The universe saw it that it wanted both of my dogs. And just like somebody that loses a child, I feel like my connection to my dogs, it's almost like when a mother loses her child, somebody says, okay, well, when you're going to have the next baby? Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe some people don't look at it that way, but to me, it's like, if my mother lost my brother, my younger brother, and then somebody says to my mother, when are you going to have another baby? That's that's how I feel. Maybe not everybody feels like that. And that's rightfully so. Everybody grieves differently, but I'm kind of at that stage right now. So I don't, I hate to make this cast about grief when I'm the worst person in the world to talk about grief, because I run the other way when I see something, that's going to shift my energy in a somber way. I always try to avoid it. I'm an avoider, if you may.
I think that there is nothing wrong with that. Everyone has different time frame. It took me 2 years, but I must say, and I'm gonna possibly nudge you, and maybe I'm gonna try to convince Karen as well to nudge you, because Sky was amazing, and I thought I would never get as of an amazing dog as he was. I have Pax. He's so different, but he's so amazing too. And what I've observed, I'm not sure whether you've been observing that with other people, dog lovers, but the second generation of dogs are, number one, healthier, naughtier, more independent, and somewhat, they're like the light that comes after the learning. Like, I'm not sure whether this is for everyone, but definitely I've seen it over and over and over. And I have, like, obviously countless friends with dogs and second generation of dogs. And the second gen is completely different. And it's almost like, is this a universal plan or program where we learn from the first dog, and then the second dog is just like this unlimited burst of energy and life and happiness? Like, it's kind of crazy. You see Pax, he's running around here and barking and protecting. Now he's sleeping, and then he's gonna be on to the next thing. But it's so interesting. It's a very interesting experience. I think that it would be a real shame if one day, it's not that you replace your first child, but I'm gonna really say it's the next chapter of learning. And the trauma of losing our dogs is never easy. But yeah, what do you think, you guys? Everyone, what do you think? Should Rodney sometimes consider that? I'm putting on a spot here. I know what they'll probably say, but anyway, no pressure at all. If it's in 10, 20 years or next lifetime, it's all good.
No, it's definitely, I love getting people's take. I remember when Sammy passed, Cindy Meal, for those that don't know her, she had the Oscar nomination for the movie Buck, the horse movie that she did. And she's an incredible producer, director, filmmaker. She said to me on the phone when she called me that day, and I said, I never want to get a dog again, because I never want to feel like this again. And that's selfishly I say that, because the grief of losing the love of your life is the worst thing in the entire world. And why would anybody ever want to do that again? And that's a terrible way to look at it, but that's how I was at that moment. And that's how I felt in my heart. And she said to me, I know you think this is your heart dog. And when I lost my first dog, I said, that was my heart dog. And she said, I've had 5 dogs, and my 5th dog, I realized, is my heart dog. I love all my dogs, but the 5th dog was so special to me. If had not taken the chance on bringing another dog into my life, I would have never got to experience the love of every single other dog. So I know how you feel, she said, but that'll change for you. Yeah, I know I see the way that you are, and with Pax, and just, the love that you have, and so, yeah, I look at it as motivation, and hopefully something beautiful that happens. And this is, this is, Peter, this is the reason why I still struggle. I've done a couple talks right now globally. And I've taken my dogs out of my slides. They were always my slides. They were like, anytime I would do a presentation, they were always part of the presentation. But man, when somebody just says their name, that lumps up in your throat, it totally immobilizes me, takes me out by the knees, and I can't even focus. So I haven't been able to train myself yet to see them or talk to them. So anyways, yes, the podcast that we were supposed to do today that twisted in another direction. But to go back to the original question that you asked me, Peter, about my childhood, and images and what you saw. Yeah, would you believe now, if you actually go online and you type the word visual thinker, why has social media taken off the way it has? Why is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, visual learning become so dominant in the world? If you actually just type in a Google search, visual thinking or visual learning, you'll see that 60% of the world population have become picture thinkers. So 60% of the world population thinks somewhat like the way that I do, where we see words and we see them as images. And so when social media had started, and I unknowingly was trying to communicate with other people, but because I couldn't put words together, I would just put pictures together. It resonated with a lot of people. It we've talked about this before online with, in past podcasts. When I was coming out with videos so fast in this, in the just opening in, like, when Facebook started in 2010, those of us who got on in 2011, 2012, imagine a library empty with no books. That because you were content creating at that time. We were filling those libraries, Peter. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was no content, there was no digital content at that time. So when you wrote an article about strawberries or apples or blueberries, it was one of a kind because it was an empty library. There may have been books and textbooks and things like that the average pet parent never saw, but you and I, and and many others in the realm, we got to fill those libraries with information. And so that's, I came out very fast, my first year, first million followers in the first year, because it was like, oh my gosh, nobody's made a video for this or this or this. It was just all open space. So you were able to create categories and categories of content with just visuals. And that's kind of what I attribute that fast rise and that fast success, just luck. It was the right time. The universe saw it fit that my path was going to fall in at the right time, at the right place. And yeah, it's a blessing. And I go back to my mother and the way that, that picture thinking worked out in the very end. It did not work out all throughout high school and school as I struggled, but it worked out today.
Thank you for sharing. This is really wonderful, and I think that you're so much better in what you're doing on that level than I am, and I'm a little bit of a hermit, and I admire your ability to actually just be out there and do it so well. And speaking of filling libraries, I do want to touch your best-selling book, because that's another thing that many authors dream of. And you write the first book with Dr. Karen Becker, becomes New York Times bestseller. It really fills the gap. I actually have it. I have it in an audio format because I'm a listener. I do a lot of computer work, so I've listened to it. I made my notes. I made my little bookmarks, and it's really a great summary of how to keep dogs healthy, and it touches all the different points in the book. Tell me how did the idea happen, and were you surprised that it was so successful, or were you thinking, oh, this is going to happen because it's so needed?
So all of it. I was surprised, and I did everything in my power to manifest it. So, first of all, I almost killed Karen with that book. I mean, God, she'll tell you, I took 20 years off of her life with that idea. I usually am the one with the crazy ideas, and she's usually the one that's like, oh God, right? Hang on for the ride, basically, sort of thing. Like in any type of those ideas, I remember, Peter, like when we were, if you go into Google search today and you just type Rodney Habib and you go scroll right down to the bottom, and anybody can do it with themselves. It's kind of fun to do. Go down right down to the bottom, and then Google will show you what the most searches in the world are. At that time, it was book, it was book, and it was longevity, and right away the universe was like, hey man, if you think about writing a book, now's your time. But I can't. Again, I just finished saying I can't put words together. I can't write a book. So how on earth was I going to write a book? It's just something. I'll make videos. So I remember saying to the publishing house, listen, I'll make a video. I'll get it out to 100 million people, but I can't write a book. Like I can't, I struggle with commas. I don't even know where the hell commas go, let alone try to put a book together. So here lies where I kind of sort of pimp and swindled the legendary Dr. Karen Becker. And I was like, hey, if I was to get all of the research and all of the data and all of the studies, of course, she did equally as much, if not more. And I was to bring in somebody that could do my part. So I would bring in a science writer, enter Kristen Loberg, who's also in the book, 14-time New York Times bestselling author. I know she just wrote Sanjay Gupta's book and Dr. Paul Mutter's book and some incredible doctors from around the world. And I was like, if I bring in like the very best, because I had to bring somebody in, Peter, that could match Karen's genius, right? Like, she's Dr. Becker for a reason. So I couldn't just bring anybody in, right? So I had to bring in somebody that could at least match her genius. And I would be able to sort of verbalize and voice to the science writer what I wanted to say and what Karen wanted to say. And our science writer would call out on our BS and assemble something that's never been done before is my selfish goal. Like like when you say you're happy jealous of someone, because jealous is sort of not a good emotional state, but when you say happy jealous, it kind of makes it a little better. So when I say my selfish goal, meaning there's never been a New York Times best-selling book ever in the dog health space. And during the journey of pitching the books, you could tell when you would talk to publishing houses, they were like, you want to write what? You want to do what? You want a book on dog longevity? And you want to talk about like blueberries and carrots? And no, we're not really interested. So I'm one of those, and I'm one of those people when you tell me I can't, it's like, all right, well, let me try to do my best and tell you why I think I can. So I made it a goal of mine to try to do my best to assemble one of the most credentialized books using the most credentialized scientists in the world. And boy, man, we went after the best of the best. I've said it many times. Time Magazine's 100 of the most influential people on the planet, Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard University, Dr. Sachin Panda from the Salk Institute and their team. The Nobel Prize was, I believe, 2015 when it was won. We talked to Dr. Eliza Eppel and her partner, Dr. Blackburn, who for the telomere effect, they won the Nobel Prize only a couple of years ago. So if you went to the top scientists in the world and you took the oldest lived dogs in the world and you let the story be told by the oldest lived dogs in the world and the translation from the best scientists in the world, would then the New York Times look at it? Would it then be a serious book? Because I mean, gosh, when you bring all these people in, and the New York Times didn't credentialize it or didn't see it as important, then possible, because they were told is impossible. So no, I did not think the book would be a New York Times bestseller, but I tried to manifest it. And I prayed to God every single night. I prayed and prayed and prayed. Please have this book taken seriously. And please, for you and I, we laugh when we think about putting something fresh into the bowl, but for the majority of the world, as you know, I mean, I don't have to tell you, Ultra-processed food is the way of life in our world. Human nutrition science, we know that you're supposed to keep ultra-processed food out of your mouth and you're supposed to put fresh food in your mouth. But animal nutrition science is the polar opposite. You're supposed to put as much processed food in your dog or cat's mouth, and you're supposed to stay away from fresh food because it could be dangerous. So how do you flip the world on its head? How do you get the New York Times and some of the biggest publications in the world to credentialize it? And how do you smash everybody's perception and change perception? And so that's what we did. And the success of it, I know now it's in 15 languages. We just got the word that France, there you go, break the news on your podcast. We haven't told anybody yet. The book is now going to be written, the 14th, I think the 14th language will be now in French. Everybody's waiting for French, and China just picked it up as well. So 15 countries around the world.
Amazing.
And it just got published in Germany, and it just got published in Spain and all the Spanish speaking countries around the world. So thank you to everyone who's listening that did buy that book, that did support that book. Thank you for making that a mission statement. That wasn't a book saying, oh, Rodney's and Karen are so cool. No, that was a book saying, this is the memoirs and the thoughts of every single integrative veterinarian in the entire world. These are the thoughts of Dr. Peter Dobias. These are the thoughts of my mentors like yourself in a book. Here you go, world. And then the world responded.
I am so thrilled to actually hear that the book has been translated in so many languages, and especially the news that it's going to be translated into Chinese, Cantonese, Mandarin, whatever languages they have. Because, as we know, China has not always been the country where pets are treated the best. And making this huge leap and you pioneering the journey of dogs becoming pets and other animals being treated better is so important, and it's so touching. I actually have goosebumps right now because I think that this is amazing. This is, if we just did that in life, it would be plenty. But I want to ask you, I know that maybe you want to reply first. And
I just want to say something about China. I just want to say something about China because I do want to say something. I was shocked before the world ended in 2019, 2020, but in early 2019, we got a call from the Chinese government, and we were asked if Dr. Karen Becker and I would be willing to fly to China and to sit down with their medical board, with their media board, with government officials, and talk about the rise of pet parent ownership. Now, Peter, I was very, very leery, right? Because I didn't want to go to China. I saw, I was seeing what was happening in Yulin and I was like, my God, and I would just hear from rumors and reports of the ways that animals were treated. And part of me was like, I didn't want having the heart that she did. She's like, if we can go down there and we can make a change, and we're going to go down there. Mm-hmm. And so I remember telling people I was going down there, Peter, I lost I'm going to say almost 80,000 followers that day when people found out I was going to China. 80,000 people unsubscribed and said, I can't believe you would go down there the way that they treat animals, and shame on you. When I got there, I was so floored by because I was preparing to land, get off the plane, and see dogs and cats hanging in meat shops and so on and so forth. And I was like, I'm not walking down the streets, just drive me straight to the meeting that we have to go to, and let's just have the meeting. When I got there, it was a totally slap to the face of reality of what it's actually like there. It is the most magical place in the world. Now, I'm not speaking on all of China, right? Because I didn't get to go to all of China. I went to the capital. We got to explore. I know that China has 5% of the Chinese population and growing now have a pet. That's 1 billion people. That's 500 million dogs, which growing, which now surpasses the United States as the largest owning pet parent dog community in the entire world. Now it's China, believe it or not, that have the most dogs. And then the way that they treat their dogs and the way that they spend money down there, they will only buy foods that are the most exotic foods. Like, so if they go into a store and you have a bag of pedigree for $10, and let's say you have a bag of dehydrated for $100, come hell or high water, they'll buy the $100 bag. They will scoff at the cheaper sort of, they won't even touch the cheaper bags. They don't care about sales or so on and so forth. So I do want to say just quickly that I wasn't quick, but I do want to say that I was shocked when I went to China, and it totally changed my entire perspective of how quickly China is changing over there, and the pet parent population over there, and the way that people love and that are caring for pets. I can't speak on all of it. I was just in the capital, but holy moly. When the last thing I'll say,
it starts somewhere, right? It
Yeah,
has to
it
start
starts
somewhere. And I understand that media and our understanding of I'm gonna say the other countries is quite skewed. When I came from the Czech Republic, and I would say that I was from the Czech Republic, everyone was kind of having that face, you kind of say, yeah, I'm from the Czech Republic. And, oh, poor you. And now Prague is the fourth or fifth visited city in Europe, and everyone goes like, wow, this is amazing. The history, the architecture, the culture, and we have malls, and you guys have this. So I think it's super important for us to open our horizons and be open-minded. I definitely think that the Asian pet owners are absolutely amazing. Like, I've dealt with a lot of Japanese clients, with Chinese clients, with Korean clients in Vancouver, and they all were just absolutely exemplary. And I can say nothing but good things about pet ownerships from the people or with regards to the people that I've met. So, I'm so glad that you're talking about it. And I'm also glad that it didn't stop you. That for you, it's not about the followers, but the difference that he make, Rodney, and the change that he can create and ignite. So that's really inspiring, and thank you for sharing this. This is amazing. So, what happens now? You have a New York Times bestseller, and for most people, this will be the pinnacle of life. What is the good part of having that and having the celebrity kind of status that you have? And what is the less optimal part? I'm not going to say bad part, but less optimal part of life past that milestone or the goal?
So for me, the reason why I was begging the universe so badly and trying to manifest getting that New York Times was to credentialize what all of us have been saying for years, to credentialize what you've been saying for years, to stop hearing people say, oh, well, that's just woo-woo. That's just bad, crazy shit that you guys are talking about, feeding animals like real food and putting supplements and nutrition into their bowls and talking about maybe the potential harms of early spay and neuter or pesticide, insecticide application or over vaccinating, whatever the case may be. For me, the bonus to answer your question is to credentialize it, to have the biggest body in the entire world, the New York Times, that everybody aims for, to say, okay, there's a lot of science here. We read the book, we fact check the science, and we agree. That was my favorite part. That can never be taken away because it's there for all of time. I don't know if there's any downsides. It was hard to have any critics. I mean, really, there's really hardly anybody that could criticize the book. I mean, there's one guy. I'm not going to give him any shine. Of course, I made him famous in a video, and so obviously he's going to say something bad. He's not going to say anything good. Another veterinarian who goes online behind a hidden identity. But aside from him, said in negative. I mean, it's eat less, eat fresher, move more and more often. Who's going to argue that? You're an asshole if you argue that. Who wants to argue that? Nobody's arguing that. And so do you know what I mean? So there was the premise around it. So there's more pressure. There's definitely more pressure. There's more outreach. More people need help. More people, where's book number 2? Of course, people will, you put your whole life and your soul into something, and then automatically once it's done, like literally somebody reads it all after years and years of work and they're like, okay, I'm done. I just ate it all up. Where's the next one? That's the same thing with viral video. People don't understand when you make videos, like when we make 2-second scenes in one of those videos, it could take 3 weeks to make, and I'm not even exaggerating, to make a 2-second scene, 2 seconds. And then people will regurgitate that information, but they always want more. Like, keep posting, keep coming up with more content, right? So now we're getting that not only from sort of the digital part of the world, but now the book part of the world is like, we want more. So where's more? I guess, and then that's not really a downside. That's more of a blessing, but it's trying to find time to even fathom taking on another project like that.
Or taking some time. The next question, you're completely throwing my plan out of the window, because as we are having this conversation, the questions that I prepare are gone, and now there are other questions. So do you ever have any free time? And what do you do if you're not talking about dogs, not with dogs, or any of those? What is your next favorite thing? And it's not dog, or it's not related to health. I mean, teaching health or talking about health and so on. Your work.
God, my dad really, damn him. I am my father's son. Like, I am a carbon copy splitting image of a quintessential landed immigrant who works 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. My father put that into my genes. And the thing is, Peter, I don't know if you feel this way, and you're so awesome if you don't, because I need to learn how to not feel this way. If I sit down and I turn on the TV, I feel nothing but guilt and shame. Guilt and shame.
It is so funny, because that's exactly like it's like, kudos to you for saying it out loud, because I feel terrible when I do nothing, and I do my best, right? But it's like, okay, at least I'm gonna be cleaning the closets or something like that. It's just like, wow. Yeah. So let's blame it on our parents, but in a good way, right?
In a good way, right? Like, I wish, and it's so, because it's usually those people that flock together that kind of feel that same way. Like, there's an insurmountable amount of guilt. A very good friend of mine sort of put things in perspective to me when he said, you only have so many units of energy that you can use in the run of a day. There's only so many hours, because everyone always talks about so many hours. There's only so many units of energy you can put your focus into something. So either put as many units of energy as you can, or don't scatter your units everywhere, because things don't typically get done. So yes, I mean, there's, I can't tell you how many people are just like, hey, when are you going to make your next movie? When are you going to, make the next meme? When are you going to do? It's hard doing it all by yourself. And I have a beautiful team today. I mean, it's a 3-man team, but I shouldn't say it's a 3-man team. It's not a 3-man team. It's a very big team of volunteers. I have the most incredible volunteers in the entire world, Peter. Like, so many incredible pet parents who are just like, let's help you make this world awesome. And I love all of them. Somebody's going to shoot me if they hear this, because they're always like, never feed the wildlife. But, and this, I'm just going to take my time to blame this on Dr. Becker, but like, there'll be crows in the park.
She's a bird person. She's a bird person. She loves
right?
wildlife.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She loves wildlife. So like, there's crows in the park with growing viruses on them, and Karen's always trying to treat them with homeopathy, right? And when Karen leaves, and I don't know if this is a video podcast or just
it is a video podcast audio as well. Yes.
Okay. So I don't know. Hold on. Let me try to get my hand oriented here. I'm moving all over the place. This is a beakless blue jay. right now who's the next guy that I'm trying to save. The universe just keeps sending these birds to my house. I don't know why
Oh my
they
goodness.
show up. So every day I gotta her name Karen's named her Rosie. I gotta grind up food for her every day because she lost her beak, and I just got to provide for it. I just told you the way that we started this podcast. I just had to bury a bird under my apple tree that just I woke up yesterday and he was just sitting under my water fountain and he just couldn't move. And it's hard, man. Like I said that starting this podcast, I'm trying now to help injured and hurt birds. I don't know. Maybe I do it. Like I don't know. People say that I do it because, and maybe I do because when you lose your dogs, you try to find something to fill your heart with, and so maybe that's what I'm doing. But man, I have just such a different love and admiration for you because I said it in the beginning of this podcast. I don't know how the hell you do it, Peter. I don't know. A vet is a different breed of human that God put on this planet. Aside from all the like the burnout that you guys have to go through and the shit that you have to take from pet parents on a daily basis, put all stuff aside. But you guys have to euthanize animals every single day. I don't know how you do it. I lost that bird this morning. I'm not attached to that bird. It just was under my fountain. I tried to heal it. I bawled my eyes out for 35 minutes and then I turned on this camera to do this interview with you. It's probably why it's so somber and probably why I'm so somber right now. But I don't know how you do that every single day. I don't know how that hasn't scarred you for the rest of your life. Like you guys have
Oh
to
my
euthanize
goodness.
animals every single day, right? Like how on earth do you do that?
Rodney, it's so funny that well, not funny. It's not funny at all that you're saying that, but it's my ESL disability that I use the wrong words at the wrong time.
No,
But
it's
I think
totally
it's so
understand.
interesting you're talking about that. First, when we look at pretty much anyone, any person in this world, and probably almost any dog in this world, we kind of read the imprint of their life experience in some way, like if we are insightful enough. And of course, we do things that are healing. Of course, we do things that kind of result often from our trauma and trauma and loss is two-edged sword. It is horribly painful, and it also makes us better human beings. It's a great learning lesson, and we all deal with it differently. I'm not going to talk about veterinarians and myself on the topic of euthanasia for a long time now, but I'll take a minute or two. I think that we now know that people are going, for example, through war, and they're suffering. But when you look at, for example, President Zelensky, he is an artist and an actor, and suddenly he is a hero. He is basically leading a nation. He's in the role of a person who is inspiring. Not in a role, he is inspiring, and he is that person. So when it comes to us veterinarians doing our job, we know it's needed, and you basically it's kind of like almost it feels like an emotional war, right? Like you have to actually contain your emotions and you have to just basically get the job done. And I think that the same way I gave up my horse for her to have a better life, the same way I flew from Norway and I asked my friend to put the IV in my dog's leg, and I took the syringe and I helped him. And that's now I'm going to be crying. But those are the things that you just kind of block out. You have to block out the unnecessary, not unnecessary, but what doesn't need to be there at that moment. And then you can break down later, right? So that's how most veterinarians work. And I think that most clients, most pet lovers are absolutely kind and generous people who make our life and who make every day special. There are the few people who probably had their own trauma or they have their own fears. Like we had some of the most difficult customers and clients, and my team would come to me and say, Peter, we have to fire this person. This person is abusive and not very nice to the team, and we have to fire this person. And I said, you guys, why don't we just give her a chance and call and ask and learn? We realized that this person is actually has gone through her trauma, has anxiety, has fears and worries. Like when we see that there is aggression or some sort of form of negativity, it usually comes from fear and worry. So to kind of end this story about this particular customer, she is now one of our favorite clients because we actually gave her the opportunity to be understood. We didn't dismiss her. We didn't tell her that she was a horrible person, but we talked to her and asked her and tried to honestly convey the message that we know that there's goodness in her. And even the worst people in the world, there's probably trauma at the core of things, and they may not be all salvageable. And I'm not going to name the one who we all are thinking about right now. But it's really important for us to ask why. And then it's easier to understand, and it's easier to change the world, and it's easier not to go eye for eye, because it has to stop somewhere. So thank you for giving veterinarians a credit. I don't take a credit for well, I'm getting entangled here because I feel that it's the whole profession, but it's also people like you, Rodney, who are making a huge difference. And what veterinarians have not been able to do in 50 years and transforming the pet food industry and teaching pet lovers how to feed their dogs, you have been able to do in much better way than any of us have done it. And so it's about collaboration, and it's also about not really hanging on that DVM or other degrees that we have, because they're not necessarily a guarantee that will make a difference. And sometimes it's the opposite, because in school we learn to follow the rules and the protocols and all that, and you were free from that, and that's why you made so much difference in the big scheme of things. Much more difference than I have or any other veterinarian, I must say, on some level, right? Or
Well,
most veterinarians.
yeah, I wouldn't have not. So first of all, thank you. And, it was my fellow pet parents that I don't know why they chose me, but they chose me and said, we're going to share your work and we'll push your work for you. And don't let us down. And so that's basically all, that kind of my driver. But I wouldn't have been able to do the things I did if you and your colleagues weren't doing what you were doing, because I was your instrument to get your message out, because it was you guys that were the ones that were saying, hey, maybe there is other ways. Maybe there's more tools that can go into a toolbox for healing. It doesn't just have to be a hammer and a saw. There's many tools that can also go into a toolbox. And let's be honest, I wouldn't have been born, I wouldn't have been me if I didn't land into an integrative vets clinic one day and then I didn't Google who Dr. Peter Dobias was and what was he doing and what was he saying and how can I help him and how can I read everything he said, now how can I take that and regurgitate it in my weird way. So yeah, this is a Peter and Rodney love festival today. It's like I said,
it
it's
is. It
definitely,
is.
yeah.
You're very funny. Uh, what shall I say? We are grateful. I think I can speak on behalf of all the integrative veterinarians. We are very grateful for your work and your book and so on. Let's move on to. I know that many people will want to hear some nutritional tips and so on. I also have some questions that I may be asking at the end of our little broadcast. So tell me, is there any is there any healthy kibble?
It's what an awesome, what's so interesting about that statement. I'm going to go off topic for a second. I was doing a podcast with a doctor and human doctor, human MD. And he said to me, man, I couldn't believe that flea and tick treatment pesticides that you were doing that you were posting and talking about. So my first question to you is, what's a safe insecticide to use?
You're asking
And
me?
that's what he said to me. That's what he
Oh,
asked me.
I see. Yeah.
What's
Okay.
a safe insecticide to use, right? Like, what's the best poison to use? Like, what's
Yeah.
the safest
Yes.
poison I can
Yes.
give, right? So,
Yes.
because when I hear insecticide, I see poison. So, as a picture thinker, when you say safe and you say poison, they don't they
Mhm.
don't mesh well, right? So, when he said to me, "What's the safest insecticide to use?" It was like, you know what I mean? Like, I was dumbfounded. So, which is the
Mhm.
kind of the same question. What's the best ultra processed food to feed, right? So, here's what I think. I think that we still have a lot to learn when it comes to nutrition and when it comes to science, and we're learning every single day, and every single day the universe humbles me. I know that in the grand scheme of things, my grandmother will tell you and your grandmother will tell you, eat as much fresh food as possible and avoid as much processed food as possible. Obviously,
Mhm.
no
Mhm.
shocker there. Nobody's floored. But what I didn't know, Peter, we're in Canada. Well, now you're in America, so we lost you to the Americans. We lost a good Canadian, but
Oh, I'm still Canadian. I
I know
still
you are. I know you are.
pay
I'm just messing
tax.
around. I'm
I
messing
still pay
around.
taxes in Canada, and
Yeah,
I'm a
okay,
resident of Canada,
okay,
and I'm
okay,
I'm a
okay.
dual citizen. How about
I know. I'm
that?
fooling around. I'm fooling around. But here in Canada, the average pet parent spends $100 a month on pet food. So he or she has a giant, let's be honest, more she's than he's, have a vast option of buying things when you have $100 budget. But what I didn't know was that the average income in the United States was $21.95 in the United States. That's the average pet food spend for $21.95. So it doesn't give them very many options.
No,
That's the
no, it
first thing
doesn't.
that I had to you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, that's the first thing that you gotta take in
Mhm.
consideration. If the
Mhm.
average spend is $21.95, then okay, then how do I write my work, make my videos, do what I gotta do around that premise, knowing that you only have $21.95 in your pocket? It really does change your perspective on how you start to
Mhm.
content
Mhm.
create, knowing that hindrance. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
do I believe there's always that dog. How many of us pet parents have had a dog, fed it fresh food, raw fed, organic, no pesticides, no insecticides, the cleanest lifestyle in the entire world? You lose the dog at 11, and the neighbor next door is feeding dog chow,
Mhm.
and his dog lives to be
Mhm.
14. That's
Mhm.
genetics, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's nothing you can
Mhm.
do there. There's nothing you can do there, and
Mhm.
there'll always be the argument. I don't. I think if I think to be quite if 80% of the world is feeding ultra processed food, then rather than saying to people, kibble is going to kill your dog, which is how a lot of us used to write in the olden days, and we were very
Mhm.
aggressive. And the second that
Mhm.
you start attacking people's personal beliefs, you're pushing your story onto people, not pulling
Mhm.
people into your
Mhm.
story. You're pushing your story on them. You repel people.
You're not
And
helping,
so
basically.
you're not
Yes. Yes.
you're not helping
Yes.
basically, right? That because the reality is 80% of the world is feeding ultra processed food. So rather than attacking people and attacking what they can only afford, what I've decided to do, and this is just my opinion only, how can I make your bowl of processed food better? So I've changed my entire mission sort of statement after 2016, 2017 to here's how I'm going to make your ultra processed food better. If that makes any
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm. Mhm. And add foods and make sure that dogs get some fresh food and as much as we can give them, right? And there's always going to be the spectrum of people who are feeding kibble and people who are feeding only fresh, non-processed food. And then there's going to be the people in between. But I think that understanding the principles of good health and good nutrition is super important. So, we all go and have ice cream or maybe fries once in a while or pizza.
Oh,
But
what about
if
the average
we,
American, Peter? With the average American household, and don't quote me on this, but from the early research that I did, low income families in America, but they solely eat processed food, ultra processed food,
mm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
So
mhm,
how do you speak to them, right? So I try to be more empathetic because I think about that person who lives on government checks, maybe food stamps, living month to month, zero money in their bank account, and they have to feed themselves, their children, and their dog. Ultra processed food is inexpensive. It's cheap, man, right? Like,
mhm,
in
mhm,
America, you can buy
mhm,
a 50-pound bag of pedigree for $16. So where else can you buy 50 pounds of food for six? You can't. It's impossible. So what I started to do was, okay, well, how do I meet people where they're at? So let's say that that person was able to afford a bag of carrots. Rather than throwing Karen says it all the time, rather than throwing the tips and the ends of your carrots away, put it in your dog's food. Here's the
mhm,
research on
mhm,
what it can do, right?
mhm,
So that's
mhm.
kind of how, that's kind of the spin and the take that I'd like to, because food shaming is terrible, right? It's one thing if you're a multi-billionaire and you're feeding dog chow, then yeah, I'm going to probably
Mhm.
razz you. And people are probably going to poke fingers at you and say, shame on you for not educating yourself because you can do it. But it's another thing when you have no money and you're feeding ultra processed food, right? It's like,
Mhm.
where do you draw the line of food shaming?
Dogs still are loved. Even the kibble dogs are
You got
loved,
it,
right?
man.
People
Absolutely
absolutely,
they are.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And I know that. I know that. There's no doubt. And then there is the kind of the group in the middle who spends maybe more money on Starbucks coffee or some sort
Yeah.
of unnecessary items that we can save money on. And then maybe we can also watch our habits, right? So it's about awareness. It's about knowing what healthy food is. And you're saying, how do we change that? I think that, healthy food can be grown in the garden, at least in the summer, in most places. And people can learn that. I think it starts with schooling in school. So maybe your next mission, I'll add another project to your,
Yeah.
to
Add
your
another,
little
yes.
list.
You know what?
Going to schools and
Listen,
teach kids what healthy food
But you
is.
know what's so brilliant? Have you ever spoken to Steve Brown? Have you ever had him on your podcast?
No, I haven't. No, I
Listen,
haven't.
you would love. You guys are both incredible humans. You guys got both incredible energy. You would fall in love with Steve Brown. Steve Brown, rather than taking the approach of attacking kibble and people that didn't, let's say, couldn't make ends meet or only were on a fixed budget, he said, "What if I could make a healthier kibble? What if I could get all the synthetics out of the food? What if I could get all the dyes, all the artificial flavors, everything out of the food? It's still going to be ultra processed. But if you only have $10, if I could offer you a better option, an option A to an option B, so a better form of ultra processed food, we could make the world better that way." And I kind
Mhm,
of
mhm,
dismissed him, Peter, because I was like, "Oh, Steve, what are you talking about? What do you mean you're making like people won't see it that way. People will be like, oh, look at Steve. He sold himself out. Now he's making like kibble and everybody's going to scoff at you." But he's a bigger thinker than I am. He's like, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to help people who can't make ends meet, or if this is all they can afford, I'm going to make that bowl better for the same price. And I was like, you know what? What an incredible way to think.
Rodney, I really like that. We cannot change the world by being righteous, and I think that the missionary zeal of those people who see the change and the difference in dogs on raw food, or when they switch them, suddenly an 8-year-old dog is moving like a 3-year-old dog, and
Yeah,
so on. Like I
it's
think people get
glorious.
excited, and then they forget that the way we approach others with the information is super important. That we can either totally discourage them and not get the mission accomplished, or we can be kind and gentle and understanding. I see that with dogs with on, let's say, choke chains or collars. Like I would never come to a person now and say, I used to do that, but now I never do. I say, oh, you're harming your dog and you're hurting his neck, and it's gonna get sick, and it's gonna live shorter life. We can't really do that, right? Like we just have to find our way. And usually what I do, and I'm not sure how you approach dog lovers about food, but I usually say something like, give compliments about the dog and say you must love your dog, right? And if you say that you must love your dog, like what do you feed it, or how is the collar? It seems like your dog is pulling. Like how is it, right? Like how is your shoulder or something?
I got a
How
strategy.
do you
I got a
actually?
strategy.
Yeah,
I got a
please tell me.
strategy.
Tell me.
I got a strategy, and I open up all of my lectures all over the world with my strategy. I learned it when I was giving my first TED talk, and I learned it at TED, and the strategy is held true. It has not failed me yet. So the first thing that I learned was, and Neil deGrasse Tyson says this all the time, the scientist. He's like, there's three truths in this world, right? So you have objective truths, meaning we did the study and we can replicate the study. So um, the sky is blue and anybody can validate that. Okay. So objective truth. Then there's political truths, right? Incessive repetition over and over. This country is good. This country's bad. This country's good. This country's bad. Right. And so you build a truth system based upon political truths. And then last but not least, the most one that's held dearly to everyone's heart, personal truth. I believe in my heart that this is the way it is, and come hell or high water, you're not going to change my opinion on it because it's my personal truth. I hold it dear to me. So now that I know those three different types of truths, what science says is when you challenge somebody's personal truth, when you challenge somebody's world belief system, immediately in the amygdala of the brain, it triggers a survival mechanism within that individual. And immediately they become standoffish, right? So, I don't know, think of something polarizing. And then I come up to you and I say, Peter, let's stay with flea and ticks. I think flea and tick medication is the best thing in the entire world. And I drink it in my coffee every single day, right? That's my personal truth. And now Peter might come along and be like, well, Rod, hey, have you seen the research? Have you seen the studies? The term is called the backfire effect. The more that you present somebody with data, the more that you present them studies, the more that you present them research, after you've challenged their personal truth, they become more entrenched in their personal truth because it's called the backfire effect. They've stopped listening to you. They've stopped listening to your studies, and they believe even more in their personal truth. Okay. So what have I learned? According to some incredible scientists, in order to get through to somebody, and there's no perfect way, this isn't cookie cutter, but in order to relate to somebody, rather than Rodney challenging Dr. Peter Dobias' personal truth, relate with Peter first. Hey, Peter, you like dogs? I like dogs. You love beautiful weather? I love beautiful weather. You love the restaurant down the street? I love the restaurant down the street. Find something that you can relate to somebody with. Then once you've related and you've given them a safe space, then maybe present your idea, but also be open to being wrong. So when you put those whole things together, when I see somebody who's feeding their dog, let's say a specific way, and maybe it challenges my personal truth, rather than pushing information on them, hey, did you know what you're feeding is terrible and this is what's going to happen and this is what's going to go on, they're not going to listen to me. But if I become relatable, hey, your dog's awesome. Your dog is terrific. You're doing such a great job. Oh, that's interesting. What type of kibble you're feeding? That's so awesome. Hey, did you know that there was a study that came out by Purdue University that said if you added just green, do you have any green leafy vegetables in your refrigerator? You add it 3 times a week to that bowl of kibble, you can reduce bladder cancer by 90%, according to scientists. Now you've got their ear. I didn't tell you you were bad. I didn't tell you what you're feeding was bad. I just told you how to make your bowl a little bit better. And then I pushes people onto their journey. And boy, do I love people. You know what I love? I love seeing those 20-year-olds who have no money, who are in school and and I shouldn't say I love it, but they use their college tuition to go buy better food for their pets. Those are my people, Peter. Those are the pet parents. I spent my second year, I went to Dalhousie University, my second year tuition. My cat got sick. I spent my entire check that the government gave me, rather than going to school to finish my university, I took my cat to surgery with it. That's just because we're just those type of people, right? Like the same thing that you were telling me with, your horses and your stories of your cats that you adopted. And I'm sure you were spending every dollar in your pocket for your pets. Those are my people. So that's how I approach people. And when I see them, and when I see those people that are like our people who get it, and they sell their sneakers and their clothes and their old books just to be able to feed their pets. Man, I love those people. Those are my people,
Mm,
man.
mm. The world is good, right? A huge portion of I dare to say that 99% of people are innately very, very good, and the rest may have some sort of brain dysfunction, similar to a limp or something, and they can't, we can't really fix everything. But I do believe that the world is good, and every time I got an opportunity or get an opportunity to offer some sort of or present some sort of situation where people can help or ask for help, there's so many good people, and that's why it's worth doing what we are doing, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to ask you a few quick questions. What is your
Yes.
favorite vegetable?
Right now, broccoli sprouts. Boy, do
That
I
is
have an
so
affinity.
awesome.
Listen, it is my favorite, favorite, favorite plant slash vegetable slash sprout, broccoli sprouts. I have such a huge crush on broccoli sprouts. I'm cheating on turmeric right now with broccoli sprouts.
By the way, did you know that yesterday I harvested my first broccoli ever that I've grown?
Oh my God, that
And
is so really.
yeah, yeah. This is so funny. I feel like our
Did
lives
you
are
take a
really
picture?
parallel in so many ways.
Do you got a
I've taken a
video?
video. It's really wonky and it's not very
Listen,
good,
you
but I'm
have to
gonna
post
present
it in
it
our podcast when you
for
present. Okay,
sure, for sure, for
present
sure.
when you share it in the comment section so so everybody that's listening to this can find it
I
easily.
will, I will, and you can see the stamp of the videos yesterday. So I definitely, it is very funny. What is your favorite fruit?
Let me ask you, what's your favorite vegetable?
Ah, you know what? Yard long beans. It's like
Really?
broccoli is second. Yard long
Yeah.
beans are amazing. If you ever try to plant them, they grow so fast that you look one day, they're this long, and then the next day they're this long, and they're
Holy
amazing
moly.
for stir fry. I have this amazing recipe for Thai stir fry with long beans, yard long beans, and Thai basil, and so on. And it's
Listen, next when
first.
we see each other, that's what you're gonna have to bring some so I can
Oh,
try it.
absolutely! I'll make you some.
Listen, you triggered my brain with stir fry and broccoli. Did you know this, Peter? I found this out. I was floored by it. So of course, everybody's consuming broccoli for sulforaphane. So for everybody who's listening, the magical component inside broccoli is sulforaphane.
Yes.
So, but in order for sulforaphane to activate, of course, you need myrosinase and glucoraphanine. They hide in the different chambers of the broccoli, and then when you cut the broccoli, those two things mix and they produce sulforaphane. Scientists wanted to know what was, and of course, when you apply heat to it, because you said stir fry, they did a study on stir fry. I don't know if you saw this study. How much heat could you apply to broccoli before you damage the sulforaphane, right? Because they were trying to maximize it. So, of course, if you eat it raw, you get the most.
Yeah.
The more heat you
Yes.
apply, you start to lose it. By accident, Peter, the scientists found when they had cut the broccoli and they let it sit out unintentionally for 90 minutes, when they went to fry it and they went to test it, they found double the amounts of sulforaphane in it. And they were like, wait a second, what the hell's going on
Oh my
here?
goodness.
This is not working. What did we do? Did stir frying increase sulforaphane? So then they cut broccoli again and they stir fried it. No, it didn't increase it. What they inadvertently didn't know is when you cut broccoli and you let broccoli sit after you've cut it, the longer that you let it sit, now they only went 90 minutes in the study. They found that you can double to triple the amounts of sulforaphane before you consume it. So for those people that are feeding their dogs or cats or themselves or their children broccoli, once you cut it, don't eat it right away. Let it sit, man. Let it sit if you can, at least 30 minutes. If you can let it sit for 90, and you will get double the amount of health before consuming
Um, thank you so much. And I also know that there's more sulforaphane in the stock, right?
You got it, brother. You got it.
But I'm gonna confess. I will ask you, and I will not hide the fact that I don't remember the effect of sulforaphane. And you're now, a
Yes.
research guru, and please, can you
Yes.
tell everyone
Oh
what it
man.
does?
So right. So I think the biggest thing that's being used for, and we have multiple published studies on it right now, if you take a look at broccoli sprouts, for instance, so if you just Google the word sulforaphane, so here's where I mutilated it, SUL, sulfur, FORPHANE. There's multiple studies. This magical, let's call it a micronutrient, has the ability to create, first and foremost, what's called apoptosis, pre-programmed cell death. Okay, so we know that in multiple studies right now in cancer research, they're using sulforaphane to attack cancer cells. Okay, so consume that, you go after cancer, check that one off the list. Dogs who are consuming kibble are consuming a very high load of what are called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. I won't get into what those do, but they're not good for you. They age you, if you may, according to advanced glycation expert Dr. David Turner. They age your organs. So the more that a dog consumes ages, like literally they'll look at like a 1-year-old dog and they'll look at his organs and he shows the signs of a 5-year-old dog. Like his organs have aged 5 years because the amount of AGEs that he's consumed. Sulforaphane in broccoli sprouts will neutralize those AGEs. Sulforaphane right now, they're using it for cognition. So those who are suffering from Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, cognitive decline, so on and so forth, when dementia, when consuming sulforaphane, it reduces those risks. In inflammation studies, people who suffer from inflammation who consume sulforaphane, there's a reduction in inflammation. In longevity studies, they did this on nematodes. Nematodes that were fed sulforaphane, it inhibited IGF-1 and insulin and increased the lifespan of nematodes. So it's anti-aging as well. There's 3 published studies on dogs, 2 on cancer, 1 on cancer, 1 on osteoarthritis. Dogs that were fed sulforaphane reduce the pain and inflammation in osteoarthritis. And then last but not least, in damaged kidney cells, it created apoptosis and repaired damaged kidney cells. So those are just a few of the many studies right now that if you did research on sulforaphane, why it's so important to be putting broccoli sprouts, cruciferous vegetables that contain sulforaphane. But just keep in mind, the more that you heat it, the more that you destroy it.
Of course. The raw it is. So crunchy. If you guys don't like it totally raw, just crunchy stir fry. And this is actually one thing that I did yesterday. I was actually making it crunchy and then I got distracted or something and came 10 minutes later and it wasn't that crunchy. So I was a little bummed, but it tasted good and at least I'm on the right track, right? I don't need to be
you're on a great you're on a great track. And so it's just important that people, especially if you're using broccoli sprouts, that you got to, because we can chew, so we can bite through it. But according to researchers, dog and cats, they can't break it down unless you pre-chop it for them. So chopping is critical. You also asked me what my favorite fruit was. Hands down, I have a giant crush and affinity for blueberries. Now, I always loved blueberries initially, but I loved blueberries even more when I sat down with longevity scientists. I loved blueberries even more when I read the report on Jake Perry, who set the Guinness World Book of Records twice for the 2 oldest living cats in the world. I loved blueberries more when I was looking at blue zones and what the longest lived people ate, and blueberries were staple in the diet. There were so many things that I learned about blueberries, Peter, about, pterostilbenes, anthocyanins, resveratrol. One of the things that I didn't know what blueberries did, a lot of raw feeders, a lot of like prey model feeders, a lot of people would be like, oh, don't put blueberries in your dog's food because it will spike blood sugars. Blueberries are high in blood sugars. It spikes blood sugars. Listen, dum-dum, for that, not you, but the person that's listening who thinks that.
Oh, I can be dumb.
Scientists,
okay.
No. Scientists will tell you.
I'm sometimes dumb.
Listen, we're all dumb. In fact, that's my mother's name for me is dumb. Anthocyanins, I didn't know this. When you consume a high starch diet, a high carb diet, when you pop blueberries in your mouth, it slows down the digestive enzymes, what it does is it triggers the digestive enzymes to slow down digestion, and it reduces blood glucose spikes. So when diabetics consume blueberries, in fact, their blood sugars start to drop. So when you add blueberries, let's say onto kibble, you avoid the spikes of glucose that you're going to get, which lots of insulin's produced and chronic inflammation, blah, 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 blah. Blueberries are like the number one, I believe, anti-aging, DNA repairing, it repairs DNA damage, fruit in the entire. Love blueberries. What's your favorite? After I set the stage.
Okay, I'm just so I don't say blueberries. Okay, I'm gonna say papaya.
No, you can say that.
I love
Yes.
papaya, but I'll tell you what I do with blueberries. Almost every day, actually more like every second day now, because I don't know why, but for 2 years now, what I've been doing, I've been blending blueberries. I have this little mixture: blueberries, acai, uh, organic wheatgrass, ginger, turmeric, and then I have some omegas, and I blend it all up.
Wow.
And I put my homemade granola. The recipe is online, so I can post it
Oh,
here
that's
too.
magic. Oh, that's
But
magic sauce.
it's really amazing, and I'm totally addicted to it. But the other part is that whenever we go to the beach and Pax runs, like he fishes and he runs and I swim, and that's every second day. Um, Only on those days he comes in the kitchen and he demands and insists he's gonna bug me until he gets blueberries topped with omega oil, with feel good omegas. So
That's
I give him
magic.
a handful of blueberries that are frozen and I pour omega on it, right? And the question that I often ask when I'm doing that is like, is it better if I just fast him and don't give him that meal? But then I go, no, this is so supercharged. This is so amazing. And
Yeah,
also, it doesn't give you that sugar spike and it doesn't really
right.
disturb the intermittent
Right.
fasting of him eating only once a day. So I every second day I give him blueberries and omegas, and yeah, it's I'm quite proud of it, and I'm so happy that you're describing the positive effects here in the detail. You know, I feel like a good student who's done a good job, right?
Listen, listen. I'm
It's
telling
so
you, it is.
it's
Isn't it awesome? Isn't food awesome?
it's so fun, and it's also, I know what we have to do one day. We have to get together and we have to cook some meals because
Yes.
and we have to cook some meals for our
We're gonna
dogs,
do
but
it.
also
We're
for
gonna do
us.
it. We're gonna do it because I want to do something with showing people how to. It's one of the things that people have been asking me to show, like to go into Dr. Peter Dobias's house and make a meal with them. Like it's something I've got it. We're working it out. I promise
Well,
we're gonna do it.
I'll cook you a meal. I'm so
I'm
excited
in.
about it because
I'm in.
did I tell you that we have, I don't think I shared it with you, but we have a few friends. We actually now are targeting the friends who actually know how to cook really well, or the ones who want to cook. And they come for a visit here, and we have like 20 different cookbooks. They're all plant-based. And we say, okay, you can stay here for as long as you want, but every 4 day, if there's four of us, every 4 day you're gonna cook a meal, and here are the cookbooks. And I'm going to ask my friends for permission to see what happened actually in a course of 3 or 4 months after they were spending time with us during COVID, because they came they came and they were a certain way, and then they left and they were a certain way. And I'm going to show the pictures before and after, if they allow me to do that, because it was fantastic. And so we have a cooking club, and we're kind of accepting new people. So if you wanna
Yes.
be part of it.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Absolutely.
And
Now,
Karen, of course. Karen
yes,
has
of
to be, and
course, of course.
anyone
Yes, of
anyone from
course,
your
of
tribe.
course.
Oh my goodness. This is
I
insane.
love it.
How I think that we've been at it for an hour and a half, but I have a few more questions. I don't know whether you need to rush, or we can maybe do
Okay,
part two
no,
if you
let's
want to, or
we got it. We got it. No, let's go. Let's do it.
oh my goodness. So I have one question that came to mind. What do you think is bigger motivator, fear or love? Um, I often struggle with it
Oh,
in my work and so on. If you want to motivate people to do something that is definitely beneficial for them, and you try to change.
I'm
their
gonna, you know
lives
what?
and their health.
That's really interesting. The hope is always love. I mean, obviously, right? Don't let the
Mm,
piano hit you. Don't let the piano have to fall from the sky and hit you till then you react, because sometimes it's too late, right? So, but sadly for most of us, like myself, it was the fear, born of desperation came inspiration. Um, that's the majority. I was looking at a statistic actually on that, Peter. It's funny that you say that, because I was looking at a stat. It said that there was people between the ages of 18 to 35 were basically set in their way. Um, but they were open to change if something dramatic was going to happen into their lives. Like that's like
mhm,
18 to 35. Like you don't really know very much at 18, right? But it
mhm,
basically it was pertaining to sort of like belief systems. For me, I acted because of fear, right? When Sam got sick, that was the only time I cleaned my shit up,
mhm,
right? Like I
mhm,
was
mhm,
I really started to delve into research and science because I didn't want to lose her, right? And it's interesting, even in my day-to-days, like, oh gosh, if I don't get this done, this could happen, or this could potentially happen. I'm usually driven by the fear of not getting something done, more on the lines of the love of not getting, you know what I
mhm,
mean? Like
mhm,
if you've got a
mhm.
project and there's a deadline, and if you don't get it by deadline, there's repercussions. It's hard to turn my mindset into love. Like I'm going to do this project and I'm going to love this project so much that I'm going to be done by Thursday. Do you know what I mean? And I know that's
I
not really,
exactly know what you
do you know
mean.
what I mean? Yeah. So
No, no,
unfortunately,
no.
I feel like I'm pushed a lot by fear when I should be moved by love. And I mean, that's a silly example, but you should want to, if it comes to dogs and cats, let's say, you should want to better your animals' well-being, their environment, their food, their genetics, because of love, not because of fear. But I feel like the majority of us, I in that bucket, moved because of fear, not because of love. Because I loved my dog. I loved my dog to death, but I really didn't get my ass in gear until the fear came in of potentially losing her. What do you say to that?
Mm. I think it's absolutely true. I agree with you. We learn through the difficult parts of our life, and we also become motivated through the difficult parts. And I often say that when I see people who have had very good and kind of sheltered and protected life, they are often lost in how to be in the world. They're often lost with regards to how to be helpful, how to be beneficial to the world, because they haven't gone through the hardship. And as soon as we experience that worry and fear for someone or about something, then it allows us to kind of move to the next level of life.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. Speaking of life, do you think it's a cycle or a spiral?
I can tell you, for me, I'm in a cycle, but it was a spiral. Can it be both?
It's a
I feel like,
circular
no,
spiral.
isn't it? I hate to, you know, it's interesting because it's the spiral that's the exciting part of life, right? Whether and I guess that would be on how we define spiral. But for me, if I was to take a look at my journey and how my dogs came into my life and how, my life morphed, that was a spiral. This cycle is, to me, is kind of like the day to day, and it's probably a total different definition. I'd love your take on it, but like the cycle would be the day to day, and I hate the cycle because sometimes I get up in the morning, I find myself going to the coffee machine like I always do, going to my computer, going through my emails, my regular routine, and then I hate that cycle. So I always try to do something different to break that cycle,
Hmm.
and a little bit
Hmm.
of spiral sometimes I find can help with that. Like there's nothing more that resets you, and I'm sure you can agree to this, than travel, especially travel
Hmm.
with your pet.
Hmm.
There's something
Hmm.
about travel that resets because it breaks the cycle.
And changing the routine and stimulates our brain. I think that we humans have evolved to be in constant change, and we we are routine animals, but we also like the exploration and the adventure and the learning. And when we continue that, that's so it's a circular spiral. I think that it can be both.
Yeah, yeah, I think I would have to. That's a very, you know what I mean? That's and that's an awesome. No one's ever asked me that question, but it's interesting because I often think it, and I will, and it's kind of why I love to. I make my schedule more busy looking for the spiral, if that makes any sense.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
want, because I get tired of the cycle. Like my if I was to just even look at my career, my short career over the last 6 or 7 years, you'll always see that I try to break the cycle and create the spiral. So
mhm,
I started with viral videos. I stopped for a year. I stopped. I
mhm,
started working on the dog cancer series for a year. I stopped. I started traveling the world and doing world lectures. Then I stopped. I started writing the book for a year. Then I stopped. Like
mhm,
I'm always
mhm,
trying to do something
mhm,
different. I can't,
mhm,
becomes just, you know what I mean? Like I need to fill up my soul. Karen says it all the time. I need to fill a cup. I need to refill my soul with a cup of something good, right? Like I need a fresh cup of something to fill my soul. And so I I kind of hold those words dear to me. So I'm always looking for something different, whether it's my career, whether it's with my dogs, whether it's my with my family or my life or my hometown. I'm always looking to refill that cup with a cup of spiral.
mhm, mhm, mhm. That's beautiful. Fill the cup with a cup of spiral.
If that makes any sense.
It's like a river, right? As well, it can be seen as a river. I say decisions, life decisions are relatively easy. We just kind of try not to swim against the current, and we try to swim with the current. And then when there's a fork, we decide left and right. It's life is binary in a way. Like if you
Yeah.
really dissect it to the core of the core of life, it's binary. It's only left or right, and not
You
swimming
got to
against the
enjoy the
current.
journey, right? You have to, as long as you enjoy the journey. I remember, Renee one time, my incredible BFF slash admin, she sent me one time during like all of my spiral, she sends me a message, just a very simple message. And it says, just remember to enjoy the journey.
Mhm,
And I hear so
mhm,
many people that strive to get that gold watch in their job, and they spend 30, 40 years at their job to get that ultimate goal. And then they finally, at the end of their job, and then like, this is it. It's all done now. It's all over. Like I worked my whole life to get here, and now I'm here, and this is all
mhm,
there is,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
And I think for all of us in our life, it's enjoying that journey. And that's what I've tried to do a lot with my dogs. Every single day, enjoy the day and thank God, the universe, whatever your belief system is, that I got that day to spend with my dog. And now my dog's Shuby. And how am I going to make tomorrow different? And how am I going to, I never
mhm.
want to live in regret anymore. And losing my two dogs helped me see that how precious every single day is. So yeah, that's I look forward to those spirals.
I'm kind of speechless because you said it so well and beautifully that there's nothing to add. I know who your influential dogs have been. I would like to know if you can give our community a suggestion for a good book. We know one, obviously, is The Forever Dog. And is there another book that has had influence on you? Um, you're leaving? Maybe you're coming back?
No, listen, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I have a book. Listen, I was looking for my book. It was on the shelf and it got moved when we did a Dr. Becker and I had done a scene here with the Forever Dog. We moved the book. I don't know where the book went, but yes, my most favorite book. Are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. All right. So, my most favorite book, the book that changed my life, the book that I viewed life completely different, was a small fairy tale written by, I hope I say his name right, Paulo Coelho from
Oh,
Brazil.
yes.
What book? Do you know what book I'm talking about?
Alchemist.
The Alchemist, man. Peter, I never realized how many people read that book. I remember I was in Europe. It was 1995. And I remember going into a cafe and all of these people were like, had this book in their hand and they were all buzzing about this book. And one woman was crying. I won't forget it. And she was like, the most beautiful book in the world, the most beautiful book in the world. And I was overhearing them. And then one of the guys in the group turns around and looks at me and he goes, everybody in the world has read this book. Watch. I bet you this guy has. You read this book, right? And I looked at him. I was embarrassed. I wasn't reading much books in the early 90s and mid 90s. I was doing, I was too busy chasing girls or whatever the heck I was doing back then. I don't even remember. So I look and I was like, what is the book? And they were like, it's The Alchemist. And I was like, what is this book? And they were like, it is the most widely read book and the most magical book in the world. It will really change the way you look at things in life. And you will remember the word omens. And man, they couldn't have been more right and spot on about how influential that book was to me. So if you are listening, you have not read the book, The Alchemist. It is a simple, easy, small fairy tale that you've got to read that has big, big life decisions in it.
And advice. And that book is a cycle or circle, right? And it's so beautiful because, and I won't disclose anything more. I'm so tempted to actually say, oh, this book is about this and this and this, and this is how it ends. I will not do that this time. And Rodney, I've had such a great time. I'm not sure whether you have had a good time, but I have had an amazing time. And everyone, we're planning a cooking session. We'll be doing that in undisclosed location for now. But I know that our paths may be connecting and getting close this year. So we'll just see. We'll just see where it's gonna happen.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. I know that you're a busy man, and it's been really inspiring, enlightening. It makes my heart full of happiness and love. And oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about. So hopefully this is not the last time.
Listen, if you, the pet parent, are still listening after all of my ramble, I love you. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you, Dr. Dobias. I'm going to call you Dr. Dobias in case my mother tunes in right at the very, in case she like scrubs all the way to the very end and listens. But no, I appreciate you very much. And I think, and I truly mean this. You have always been a mentor of mine. I have always been sharing your work. Your articles are still imprinted in my brain. Like they were the ones that inspired me to get out there in the world. And I truly mean that. And I thank you so much for inviting me. And just having such a different conversation, man. This is probably, of all the podcasts I've ever done, my favorite, because it's just a conversation that I've never had with anyone before.
Thank you. Thank you. One more last thing. Where can people find you? Most people know you, but if they don't, which is rare, where can
they can
people
find me on the internet? You can find me on the internet. Just turn on the internet and I'm sure you'll find me.
Rodney Habib, Habib. Thank you, Rodney. We'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you, brother.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.